Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Shop Talk, hosted by the Triangle Area SQL Server Users Group. Welcome to Shop Talk. If this is your first time, we're glad to have you. Any number above one, we are marginally less glad to have you until there's a certain point at which we're effectively not glad to have you anymore. But I will say, marginal gladness will never go negative. Changes in marginal gladness will. So, yeah, gladness level will never decrease. Yay Monday! Somebody has the Monday blues. But hey, on the plus side, Monday is almost over. It's after work Eastern time, so we're done with Monday. Now the West Coast people, they still have good chunks of Monday remaining. That is their burden, not ours. Nonetheless, in case this is your first time at Shop Talk, again, welcome. The whole idea is that we like to kick back and have a chat about a few different technical topics, as well as just a little bit of bloviating, just a bit of complaining, the occasional rant, and also the occasional audio problem, because we're a very professional podcast. So we have with us regular co-hosts. Number one, in this direction. I don't see. I'm so professional. I don't even know what direction Mala's in. Mala's in that direction. How you doing, Mala?
Doing well. Good
Excellent.
evening, everyone. I'm
Very good.
trying hard to find the link for Twitch, which I will in a second. But good evening.
All right. And we also have the one and only Mike Christensen. How you doing,
Hello,
Mike?
everybody. I'm doing very well, thanks.
Doing much better now that Mike has found every other Mike Christensen and made sure that he is the one and only.
It's very common in Denmark. So in Denmark,
Not anymore. It's not.
I did not murder all the other Mike Christensens.
Look. Let's not use the M word here. That's for the lawyers to decide. All we're saying is the one and only Mike Christensen is here. He would have 3 of his class in Denmark. Not anymore, Anders. All right. Statements of fact aside, which are definitely not usable in court. We have several things going on today. I have for us a few articles. Mala's got some articles. Mike has some articles and thoughts. We've got a lot, and I should note, hey, this is chat driven. Chat, if you have any questions, if you have any thoughts, get your chat questions and your chat thoughts in chat, and then we'll talk about those as well. You may even have priority because technically this is a chat driven podcast.
I can get on my chat.
Mike could chat, yeah. That would give you double power, because not only would you be a co-host, you would also be a chatter.
I'm just gonna make airplane references all night, Anders.
I think that's perfectly reasonable. I don't have any problem with airplane references. I think that those are
actual airplanes, not the movie.
Oh. I mean, I would have gone for the movie. Do not go there. We're going to try not to go there, because I don't want this to devolve into an hour of airplane quotations, except for that bit about Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, because he doesn't play defense. Nonetheless, I am going to see if I can share my screen here, and this is what I want to see. So we've got some topics. The first topic is from James Sarah. So this is James's blog, and let me go ahead and drop that in chat here. And there we go, James's blog post in chat. And James has some information on Microsoft Build, some announcements that came out of the Microsoft Build Book of News, which you can click here and grab a copy of yourself. I'm not going to grab a copy of it myself, but I know that I could if I really wanted to. There was Build recently. Yes, it was, what was it, last week? Well, I mean, I could check this. Microsoft Build. They've already updated their website to not show? Okay, it was the 19th through the 22nd of May, so it's about 2 weeks ago. Just a statement of my level of enthusiasm. All right, fair enough. Fair enough. See, I thought you were being serious. I had to answer seriously. I should have known better. Should have known better. But what James mentioned, actually, to Anders' point of statement of my level of enthusiasm, knowing about Anders, James has 15 items on this list. And I just want to point out Fabric, Copilot, Copilot, Fabric, 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 and Copilot, Fabric, and Copilot, Copilot-ish, Fabric. Oh, look, SQL Server. Okay, so there was one thing that came out of build that was not related to Fabric or Copilot. And even then...
Can you do a Control F on Azure? Oh, you're going to get some of that. Never mind.
Yeah, you'll get some stuff in there. But this is data platform specific.
Gotcha.
So there was plenty of stuff that was outside of the data platform space. But if you're interested in its Copilot co-hosting, you're not wrong, Anders, and that's the problem. The problem is you're not wrong. Microsoft, I've mentioned this before, and I don't think it's any secret to anybody. They have spent the last year plus really driving us into Fabric and Copilot. That is their two areas of focus. There are people within the organization. Remember, Microsoft's a very large company. There are plenty of people within the organization who will say, "Oh, no, we're heavily focused on SQL Server tools or on development of SQL Server. And hey, there is neat new stuff in SQL Server 2025." And there is, and we'll talk about some of it. But this right here, this is what Microsoft is promoting. This is what Microsoft is delivering on the data platform side. It's all Fabric and Copilots. So I don't think James is cherry picking. I mean, you can look at the book of news, and you could pull stuff out. But even just looking, this is what Microsoft wants you to see. This is their emphasis in terms of the build book of news. So looking at it, just at the high level, like this is the level that you would expect technical tech reporters to get down to. Like they may read the first paragraph, but let's be honest, most reporters are barely literate as it is. So Copilot tuning. Okay, so first item that they talk about, AI at work. And then you scroll down. Oh, look, the agent-to-agent protocol, part of Teams' generative AI processes. Okay, Copilot Studio. Okay. You scroll down just a little bit more. This is all Copilot Studio stuff. Oh, look, M365 Copilot. So now you have Clippy. Now you have Clippy in your PowerPoint. We go down further. M365, not Copilot. Enhanced GitHub application for Teams. Okay, that's a thing that is actually not Copilot or Azure AI related. Oh, but then, thank goodness, they gave us one non-AI thing, but they brought us right back into AI. We're safe, everybody. More Azure AI. You keep scrolling, more Azure AI, and it's just database and analytics. Okay. Oh, look, Cosmos and Fabric. Okay, we're now into Fabric. So, I mean, I'm harping on this point a little bit, but I think it's pretty clear as we go down through here. Agentic DevOps. Guess what that's about? Copilot coding agent, Copilot chat. Okay, industry. Planetary Computer Pro. I actually don't know what this is. Allow customers to deploy within Azure and help them enhance geospatial insights generation and integrate those into AI workflows like Fabric. Maybe you'll start hallucinating its own feature set. That might be more interesting. random generative AI process, please make up some new cool features for SQL Server so that we can pretend that we have new cool features. And that I'm definitely being harsh on. I'm being harsh about that because I have our next couple of posts actually talk about some of these new cool features. So one of them is from Anthony Nocentino. Apparently, we can get government health reports with hallucinations in there for what we should be doing. Yeah, and I was actually talking about that pre-stream. I was pre-ranting, pre-stream, kind of building up my preparatory work for rants because you don't want to pull a muscle when you're ranting. So we were talking about that a little bit before the stream. It's like just the worst part about it is having the press secretary go out and say, "Oh, it was a formatting error." Just own up. This was somebody ran a generative AI program. It generated some bogus information, and just own up and say, "Yep, that was a screw up. Who shouldn't have done that one," and go fix it later. But that's I don't know. I don't know, Mala. It's an open question, and it's absolutely not um, saying anything malicious about any press secretaries. Um, we're not going to
No,
go.
I mean, I'm not saying anything malicious either. I'm just saying not everybody knows what that is. So,
Yeah, or the
yeah.
ramifications. And I mean,
Yeah.
we've seen actually recently several cases where lawyers have submitted briefs that have had made up cases. I remember we talked about that a year ago. It's happening more often. People are getting busted on it more and more, and so it's just um, I'm updating my line that generative AI is like a drunken intern to generative AI can be a drunken intern, but more often is like a 4-year-old. 4-year-olds don't have rational thought. 4-year-olds are very creative. They come up with all kinds of things. You're playing a game. My game is I'm a lawyer. Here are some legal cases. And it comes up with legal cases. Like, isn't that fun? And they're not real, but, we're playing make believe. We're in make believe land. So it's as real as anything else. Except then you try to take that into the real world and, well, oops, it turns out that's not real. All
Yeah,
right. Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
most recent case I heard was it said what the 15 most anticipated books are of 2025, and and 4 of them were made up.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yep.
And then
Yeah.
yeah, so I mean, I definitely use it, but also I'm seeing too the big thing that I've been hearing about too is just being able to think. Like if you are a lawyer and you maybe are average and like you're doing it at the same time. I
So
don't know.
I use it for 3 reasons. Exactly 3 reasons. One is sort of like I would use with Grammarly, although sometimes Grammarly is a lot better. But sometimes, if I just happen to be in there, if I ask it to summarize the content of something, and when in my master's class, I have to read a lot of PhD papers that are written in very difficult language. And if I supply it a paragraph and say, can you simplify it? It is not bad at doing that. It does a good job of that. uh, I do have to verify, of course, that what it rewrote was the same thing as what the original was sometimes, but
Yeah.
it makes it very readable, and that way I like it a lot. The second use is the kind of thank you cards we saw for SQL Saturday, that kind of image generation, for fun, purely fun reasons, nothing attached. That is a lot of fun. And the third is to generate small volumes of test data. Those are my 3 use cases, and so far it's been okay with those. I don't
Yeah.
use it beyond that for anything else.
Oh, sure. And the last two, they're both uh, creative artificial information generation, which
Right.
that's kind of what you get from generative AI processes. Like creating
Mhm.
images. Yeah, absolutely. Creating short stories or role playing or those sorts of things.
Mhm.
That's exactly in the wheelhouse for a generative AI process or make some fake data that looks like this, and it might
Mm-hmm.
look like that. Sometimes the data will be wrong. It'll be, well, it's not in the format I expected, but often enough, you can put in enough guidelines to make enough of the information
Mm-hmm.
usable enough.
No, if you supply the format, if you say this is my table, generate me data for this table, it'll do a good job of that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
generally so. Yes.
yeah.
All right, so catching up on chat, which has been going wild since the rant started. So Mike uses Copilot and does have an enterprise license, and it does help with some tasks. The most responses I get are something went wrong, so now the first thing I type is test, and it probably costs 17 cents every time I do that. You might not be wrong about that.
I made 17 cents up because it's a prime number that I really like, but that I do get that a lot, so I get tired of it because a couple of times I wrote, here's some SQL code. I need to like take out all the commas and I need you to format it, whatever. And then it's like something went wrong.
Yeah.
Well, you have free formatting tools for all that, Mike. Like
I
very good
know,
formatting
but
tools. Yeah.
no, I agreed. But for a couple of things that I found, like vertical editing, or I can do control find or whatever, but like it'll do it much faster than my proficiency skill, usually.
Yeah.
So what they call PostSQL is my favorite formatting thing. I really like it a lot.
What's it
When I
called?
want to use it, I'll post the link 1 second.
Yeah, it's poursql.com.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, you guys have mentioned that before.
Yeah. Yeah, we've shown this on the channel during
yeah.
Shop Talk. You just put in really crappy SQL that your developers make, and then it'll create formatted SQL for you.
I can't use that one because of Epic.
No, you can download it and use it locally, Mike. This is a web thing
Oh,
that
I'll do that. Oh, yeah, if I can do
yeah,
that,
you
I'll
can
do it.
do that. It's just .NET code and it's all outsourced.
Yep. So looks like there may even be an SSMS extension, although this is years old, so I don't know
Yeah.
about that.
Or Notepad++. I use Notepad++ all the time.
Yeah, so you might find that. All right, so double checking. Marshall said the published list that Mike mentioned came from Hearst Media. It was included a number of newspapers as a supplement. Anders, Copilot is great for writing those lead and lag queries I write once every 2 years. I can see that. Now, I write lead and lag queries much more often, but that I think is a reasonable use case for Copilot where, all right, let me try something, and if it works or not, well, I'll figure it out. I know what I want. I know how I get there. Whether or not you're going to give me the right answer, it'll spur something in my mind. I had Copilot write a story of how vibe programming ended civilization. I'm not going to say it's
What?
not. That was Anders.
Oh, man, it's scaring the crap out of me.
All right, so back to SQL Server 2025 features that I am looking forward to. Anthony Nocentino had a great blog post about using ZSTD compression. So ZSTD, this is a compression format that Meta came up with, and Microsoft has incorporated it in SQL Server as another option for how you can compress backups that you take. Historically, the Microsoft format for backups is a binary version of copy MDF, NDF, LDF files, wrap them all up in a .bak, ship them all off to you. And there is a built-in compression that's been available since SQL Server. I wanted to say 2014, but actually it's been in there earlier because there were issues with earlier versions and compression. I think it was 2008 that backup compression came in. But anyhow, compression's been available for nearly 20 years. And this is the first major change the second major change that we've seen. The first major change was actually around compression plus encryption, where there was a bug where encryption would happen first and then compression would happen. And if you know anything about how encryption randomizes data and then how compression on random data is actually larger than the original data set, that doesn't turn out very well. So that was a bug. They had to fix it. They do things in the right order now, where you compress first and then you encrypt. And this is a new change. So do I trust Microsoft's first implementation of new compression with my job? That's a good question. I have 2 blog posts from 2 people that I trust and appreciate, but neither one of them is a complete and thorough testing. So you might want to do your own complete and thorough testing. So the idea here is this algorithm, Z standard.
Hey, Thoreau the writer or thorough?
Thorough, not thorough. Henry David Thoreau never wrote about SQL Server backup compression. And I consider that a knock against his legacy.
I know. He could have been coming up with so much in the woods by himself.
He should have. What was he doing out there? Just being lazy. All right. So this is Anthony's setup. Basically had a 389 gigabyte file and did a couple of tests. One of them was write to null. One of them was write to S3. And he points out that there are 3 separate options for Z standard. One of them is low compression, which is the default setting. Then you have medium and you have high. And this is writing to null. So the null output is basically dev null. It's not writing to disk. It is just taking the bits and sending them off into the ether. So if you have no compression, it took him about 94 seconds on whatever hardware he has at about 4 gigabytes per second and took about 7% of a CPU of the 1 CPU core that is being used for backups. Or for this backup, I should say. With Z standard, it took about 213 seconds. So you can see that it took twice as long. And it took like 52% of CPU. But MS Express is the old backup format. So MS Express took 4 times as long writing to null. And you might say, well, why would anybody ever compress a backup if it's going to take 4 times as long? And the answer is, it doesn't take 4 times as long generally. This is when you're not writing to disk. Writing to disk is a very slow part of this process. The CPU portion is important, but as we'll see, when you start writing to actual disk, things slow down considerably. Now, in his case, he's writing to slow disk because he's writing out to S3. So we have this 389 gigabyte backup set. And remember, write to null took 94 seconds. Now it's taking 259 seconds. MS Express, 441 seconds from 428. So you can see that here, MS Express, the amount of CPU load is not the throttle necessarily because this is slower, but it's not going to make things faster for you. Basically, you're riding pretty close to the limit of your disk and your CPU there, and it's taking 84% of CPU to get there. For Z standard low, which is the default, you can see the backup set size is larger than what we had with MS Express. So you're not backing up as thoroughly in terms of level of compression, but it takes somewhere around half the time. Now, average CPU is still 80%. All 4 of these are looking at 80 to 85% CPU utilization. Medium and high, so the medium is somewhere around MS Express in terms of backup set size, but it took longer. High, in his case, did not decrease the size very much, but did drastically make it longer. I wonder if the resulting compression ratio varies according to the target media or null. It should not, because the compression process is going to be a CPU process that will take that data, compress it down, and then write operations happen. So there's no code that I'm aware of. Granted, there's a lot of code that I'm not aware of, but I'm not aware of any tricks in SQL Server where they would say, you're writing to this kind of disk, therefore I'm going to purposefully slow down the compression, or I'm going to compress more or less. It's going to be the same compression ratio. It's going to be the same end result. You're still writing 218 gigs or 266 gigs, whether you're writing it to dev null or you're writing it to S3 or you're writing it to regular disk. So this is what Anthony came up with. Now, as he notes, him testing one lab, one database. So I wanted to throw in another example, and this is from Andy Yoon. So I'm going to zoom in just a little bit here. And this one actually is a little bit older of a post. This one was, he came out with this before Anthony, so good on Andy. Here's what Andy found. Compression. So writing to null. 4 files going to null with normal compression, 478 megabytes per second. Low, 534. Medium, 714. High, 326. So notice in Andy's case, medium was writing out faster, and this was his recipes demo database, which is 25 gigs. But I do want to point out that Andy's recipes database is not a normal database. It is mostly vector data and large text. So he uses it very heavily for language model operations. For that reason, yeah.
So what does NUL mean versus NULL?
NUL it's an official operator. This is the null operator for a disk target, for a backup target. What this is saying is no device. Why they used NUL instead of NULL, I don't know. But that's just the way you use the term.
Gotcha. I just null is such a thing we talk about. I was like, wait a minute. All right,
yeah.
Keep going.
Yeah, so this is old mainframe days. It could be because this is probably, I mean, that operator probably comes from Sybase versus even SQL Server. Who knows? Somebody probably knows, but I don't. Nonetheless, I just call it the equivalent of dev null /dev/null. But essentially what this is saying is we're not going to write to a disk or to a tape file or to anywhere else. The data is not going anywhere. It's just the CPU is doing its work, sending the buffers out, and SQL Server says, I received a new buffer. Very nice. Throw it away.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
Now here is Andy writing to 4 backup files on disk. Ola started supporting null a few years ago, if I remember correctly. Probably, yeah. And I know Minion Backup has supported null, and that's been around for a bit. Even before then, obviously, you could use backup to null. In fact, I have a talk that I've done on optimizing backup performance. Using data science techniques to optimize backup performance is the full name of the talk. Or optimizing backup performance using data science techniques. That's the full name of the talk. And the whole idea starts from we need to take a bunch of backups. So you can take those backups to null. You can take those backups to disk. Understanding those differences, like taking that backup to null, is going to give you an idea of what is the best that you could possibly do. You will never be faster than writing to null. Disk does not take negative time. It will always add time. The question is if it adds a small amount of time or a large amount of time. The faster your disk, the less additional time it adds. But there will always be some additional time. And so we see here 4 backup files. Compression went from, the question I love that you said never just now. Yeah, it's rare. It's rare to be able to concretely say never. But doing a thing will always take at least as much time as not doing a thing. So that one's an easy one. And just looking at Andy's example here, you have 478 megabytes per second versus 295 megabytes per second. You've got 534. Oh, he has here 598 megabytes per second. But one thing to remember about this is where it gets challenging when you're running tests, is he ran these. It took 44 seconds. But it only took 39 seconds here. Yeah, other stuff's happening on that computer as well. So it's really hard to have cross-time reasonable comparisons that are effective. I would consider 44 seconds and 39 seconds, they're pretty doggone close. But it is interesting that there are close. So this is 33 seconds. This one took 56 seconds. So you see, writing to disk, it took a lot longer. I'm wondering if there was something funky that was going on in this medium, or if those two were swapped. If Andy actually meant this was low and this was medium. I could see that being the case, because going from 33 to 39 seconds and going from 44 to 56 seconds, again, I could see that. 94 seconds for high, and this was 73 seconds. So, you can see that as the compression level increases, the level of complexity, I suppose, increases, and thus the number of megabytes per second we're able to write decreases. However, his file size goes from, what is this? It's 25.13 gigs. So it's going to be about 25 gigs for a backup. Just .BAK with no compression. 16 gigs with compression. So, all right, that's a good, 40% drop? Low compression is worse than old Microsoft Express compression. So that's similar to what we saw with Anthony. Medium compression is better. High compression, slightly better. Again, this is one database. Neither this database nor Anthony's is conclusive. It is not proof, but it is interesting. It's interesting to see two separate data points where high compression doesn't seem to make sense in terms of your marginal benefit. You're getting a very small improvement in or reduction in data size for a very large cost in time. And over that period of time, that CPU is running hard. In Anthony's case, we saw it running at 80-something% over this time. So I have a core running at 85% for 94 seconds versus for 56 seconds. I'd rather have this medium and have it be 70 megabytes bigger, thereabout, and then have another 40 seconds of CPU time that I can use for other queries. So basically, I would not take either of these as conclusive fact of you absolutely need to switch to Z standard. What I would take them as is interesting early findings, knowing that this is still in preview. Performance may change. Pubs would take about 0.2 of a second. Yeah, seriously. Even like wide world importers, you'd have to really scale that thing up to make its backup take any amount of time. Pubs probably takes like 20 minutes because you have to handcraft every query. All right. So that's what we get from Anthony and from Andy. I'll see if I can get a test of it in my 32 terabyte load test D2B. I would actually love to see that. There are some really neat opportunities for people to try this out. And I would love to see how it performs with what I'll say are more realistic databases versus the kinds of databases that we tend to create. You'll have, even in my case, when I did my optimizing backup performance talk, I did have a real customer database. Obviously, you don't get to see any of the data in it, but the thing of it was that one table was a strong plurality of the data, and it was weird XML and binary data. So that's not a normal case either. it would be interesting to see how does this differ when people have what we would consider to be more normal databases, things that are warehouses or large transactional databases, versus in Andy's case, that was all vectors. It was like 85% vector data. Or Anthony's case, where he's writing the results out to S3, and S3 is going to have an impact on performance. One table in that database is 19 terabytes. Yeah, okay. If it's maybe that is the norm. Maybe it is the norm just to have one wildly oversized table, and then everything else fits in the rest of the space. I suppose.
One table?
Yeah, if I were to guess, it's probably a log table or a descriptions table.
Okay, yeah. I was like, my whole NAS at home is 30 terabytes, and that seems like a lot.
Order history. Okay, all right. So it's a history table that,
Yeah,
but it is.
snapshots.
How could we measure or rank a normal database? Data types, number of pages of each type. Well, that's a good question. When I think about, oh, let's see, how would we do that? The normality of a database, which is different
Oh
from
boy.
normalization.
Mm-hmm.
But I would probably want something like, um, you're going to have a distribution of like data sizes and tables. Not all tables will be the same size. So looking for uniformity is a fool's errand there. But you would probably want something along the lines of a mixture of data types, a mixture of amounts of data, more than one large table, where large is relative. And I think that would be probably my starting point. I know I'm being very fluffy about how I'm describing it because I don't have a solid answer off the top of my head. And as I think about it more, I may be dreaming up a hypothetical scenario of what could be a neat database. But in reality, we all have the audit table that's 85% of the size of the total database, or
Mm-hmm.
the one XML table that has XML blobs, each of which is 20 megabytes and just takes up enormous amounts of data. And thank you, Solomon, for pointing out NUL is the DOS device name for the null device. So it's like LPT1, PRN, COM1, etc. It's not a SQL Server thing. It's a DOS thing. Much appreciated.
That's from the SQL Sharp guy himself.
Yep. All right. I sat in on a speech by Pamela Hood on large databases. I assume it's Pamela Hood. Someone raised their hand. They're
Oh,
huge.
that's common. That happens a lot at Summit.
Yep. My
Yep.
huge 86 gigabyte database.
Uh-huh.
Yes, well, yeah, I know. And this was 2 years ago. And yeah,
Well,
go ahead, Mike.
yeah, I think I got to look at our stats because we have like, I was really surprised by working at Duke because, we have 5 million patients and we actually we have historic data that we have put into older storage. I alone have billions of records for the project that I do. So I got to double check, but I thought it was like 75 terabytes.
Yeah, wouldn't be surprised.
There's notes, there's operational notes, there's every 5 second, data from monitors in some units. Not all units do it that often, but I mean, if you printed out your medical record, I mean, it might, depending on your health and your age, it might be this big.
Sure. And yeah, I don't want to denigrate anybody. Like Marshall mentioned here, hey, look, all of us, we have our own context for the situations that we've encountered. They may seem tiny or massive to other people or in different contexts. And I could talk about, I'll have conversations with someone like Thomas Grosser who's like, "Oh, I have this many petabytes of data now," and I'll say, That's cool. I've never worked at a company that has anywhere near that data. All the companies I've worked for combined have less data than that. So yes, it is a
Yeah,
question
it's all
of
relative. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
because even working with the Stack Overflow database, like there's different sizes that you can import, and the performance, even on a beefy machine, would be bad if you don't have indexes and all that.
sure. So I guess the way that I would put it is, yeah, using relative terms and like VLDB used to be a thing that you would hear a lot, very large database, and people would term that as, oh, that's a terabyte. But that was a terabyte 10 to 12 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
As hardware gets faster, as really as hardware gets faster, because software gets slower. But as hardware gets faster, well, you can operate on a terabyte much faster. You can operate on it. You could scan a terabyte in an all flash array pretty doggone quickly. So it's now a lot easier to deal with. Relatively speaking, 800 gigabytes back in 2022 or 2002 might be about 32 terabytes today. Yeah, quite possibly. Knowing that you had to deal solely with hard disks, that SSDs did not exist at that point.
Right.
That's where, okay, 800 gigabytes solely on hard disk, that's a challenge. Uh, RAID 5 and a disk enclosure, yeah. And those are all, I imagine those are all HDDs. And RAID 5, not even the best RAID type for databases. But nonetheless, I guess where I'll leave that bit off is, yeah, it's better not to try to use the contextual terms of uh, this is a huge database or this is a tiny database or whatever, and just talk sizes. That, hey, okay, it's a 80 gigabyte database, but it's taking us 4 hours for a backup. Well, that might indicate, is it a hardware thing? Is it a performance thing? Are you using the right backup settings? Do you have other things going on at that time, et cetera, et cetera? Yeah, RAID 10 is where I would have gone.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so what happens to the size of those demo databases when all the non-clustered indexes are present? Usually, they don't increase very much. There usually aren't a huge number of non-clustered indexes in demo databases, and they generally are already there when you have the backup. So if I look at, for example, the Chicago parking tickets database, that one's about 16 gigabytes, and it's a really cool demo database. I love it a lot. That's with all of the indexes. You could probably tighten it up a little bit and make it a bit smaller, but it's uh, with those indexes, it's not a huge difference. It's uncommon that you're going to find the non-clustered indexes to be like the radical drivers in your database size. There are exceptions. Most of the time, those exceptions are either one of two cases. Number one, you have a clustered column store index and you have non-clustered indexes on top of it. That's a real concern. I've had database or tables in databases where the clustered column store index is really small, and then each non-clustered index is enormous because I have several billion rows, but they compact extremely well in column store. So that's number one. Number two would be you're not compressing the non-clustered indexes, but you are compressing the clustered indexes. I would compress those non-clustered indexes. Option number three is you might have way too many or way too large of non-clustered indexes. And that's usually the scenario that I'll see, where if non-clustered indexes are the massive driver, like more than 4 to 5 times the size of the clustered index, then it's probably going to be, let's see if we don't have the ability to get rid of 2/3 of these non-clustered indexes, because you're probably not using all of them. Let's find out. Instant file initialization was a huge improvement as well. Oh yeah, that was big when it came out. All right, Mike, you have 2 topics of interest. Topic number 1, SQL Server Management Studio 21 is out. What are your thoughts?
Yes, I like the IntelliSense better. So I am not a super proficient SMSS user, but I found the installation process with review worked well. I feel like I like it. It's just got a slicker, uh, it looks a little bit more modern, but it's been pretty much the same except for, I mean, there are a lot of additional features that I probably don't even use. But for me, IntelliSense is one of the things where I really have a hard time because dbeaver is the open source one that uses different dialects, and IntelliSense there is very, very, very good. So one of the things that I do a lot is like I will alias a table, select R, and use like the space bar, and it will pop down all of the columns.
Right.
There's little things like that that are like, really cool. But of course, you can also do like, select top 1,000 rows. So I definitely like it, and I've now upgraded it to the non-preview version on my virtual machine and my regular machine. So I pretty much use it with dbeaver all day because also dbeaver, the free version, doesn't have execution plans. So obviously I need SQL Server for that, and Sentry One, which you guys taught me about.
Right. So Anders asks, did they make it work on Mac or Linux yet? No, and they never will.
Oh, no.
That's what Azure Data Studio is for.
Oh, stop.
Okay. That's what Visual Studio Code with the MS SQL extension is for.
Well, then there's Data Grip, and one of the ones is like table of something or other. There actually are some pretty good Mac ones that I've used. But
SSMS 21 is not built on VS Code, Anders. SSMS 21 is built on Visual Studio.
Some visual.
Yeah, Visual Studio, yes.
Yeah, so SSMS has, for the past decade, been on Visual Studio.
Right.
Azure Data Studio was built on VS Code.
VS Code, yes.
Very different platform.
That's where I got confused, yeah.
Azure Data Studio was a fork of VS Code, and that's the reason it went away too. They didn't want 2 products.
Yeah, they didn't want to maintain it. I thought they said to switch to VS Code. No, they switched to VS 2022 so that they could get 64-bit capabilities. They were on something like VS 2013 or thereabout.
Whoa.
Yeah, it was built on an old version of the Visual Studio shell. They went to a very new version now that Visual Studio supports 64-bit, has a 64-bit application. It's a bit of a problem for some people. Yeah, I mean, it is a problem that you can't run it in Mac OS or Linux. Wine has never been able to emulate it very well. Visual Studio is a Windows-only product. And if you ask anybody at Microsoft about that, they're going to say, we'll use VS Code. So that's the world I live in. But Azure Data Studio is still usable, yes. Yes, and I still have it installed. I still use it.
Oh, I'm going to use it for another 2 versions at least, and then it might get old. But
yeah,
it's usable, very usable. Yeah,
I like the import wizard a lot better than some of the other.
Yeah, and True, and I will say that the VS Code extension has improved in the first couple of months, so they're getting pieces in. But it's going to take a while before they will be where they were with Azure Data Studio. Is SQLPS.exe still included in 2025? I don't know. I thought they got rid of that.
What is that?
SQLPS was back in the early days of PowerShell. I want to say this was SQL Server 2008. Okay, so NanoDBA, SQLPS has been deprecated. And
yeah, I think it went away with 2016 or something like that. That's what I remember.
It was
Very,
deprecated.
very early on.
It was deprecated, but I don't know if it's actually fully removed because here, let me pull this up. SQL PS says it will be removed in a future version of SQL Server. But the thing is that Microsoft, since about 2012, has stopped actually removing stuff from the product. They will deprecate it. They will never update it, but they will almost never remove it. Unless there's a security issue that they have to take the code out, they have to remove that code. They typically will not follow through on their deprecation. So for all I know, it could still be there. And by the way, I do have SQL PS on SQL Server 2022. So it is in 2022 at least.
Oh, it's still around, Kevin. It's a long time.
It is still around. And Mike, to answer your question of what SQL PS is, way back in the day when PowerShell was first starting, the PowerShell team recommended that other platform teams basically build their own PowerShell interfaces. There was a PowerShell for Exchange, there was a PowerShell for SQL Server, and that's how they recommended it. Within a couple of years of that, the PowerShell team said, actually, that was a dumb idea. Instead, we should build modules and deploy those modules so that you just have PowerShell, and then you can import the module for Active Directory, import the module for Exchange, for SQL Server, for whatever. So SQL PS was the SQL Server team following that PowerShell advice early on, and then getting burned and saying, oh, don't do that. Well, they haven't kept it up to date. It is very, very old PowerShell.
So it looks like PowerShell was 2006, so it was probably made a few years after that.
Yeah, I think SQL Server 2008 is when it would have came out.
Wow.
So Andrews mentions they deprecated numbered stored procedures before SQL 6, and they're still usable. Yeah. Marshall's right. They are afraid of customers that can't be bothered to update their stuff, which leaves an even larger mess for people like us to end up having to clean up later when things finally collapse. True. So that is one factor. The other fact, and it does come in, it comes into play where Microsoft did get, I wouldn't say they got burned, but several big customers got burned with some of the stuff that they removed out of the product. Things like certain things around Vardecimal. There were a couple of other pieces that were actually removed, and people were using them in their code, but didn't update their code, and so things would break. And then they got very angry at Microsoft. Ugh. Nasty equal star joins, the old ANSI 89 style join. I wish they would get rid of all of that, but they won't. Now
the star joins with the parentheses around them.
Yeah, the equal star and star equal joins where they're left outer and right outer join respectively.
Right. Oh, that's a long time ago.
Yeah, that
okay. You're hurting my feelings.
That was the ANSI 89 standard. The ANSI 92 standard introduced inner join, left outer join, right outer join, full outer join, cross join, and basically said, do not use the old style anymore because the old style is dumb. They didn't actually say dumb, but yeah, using commas to declare tables and then putting all of your join criteria in your where clause. There are zero benefits to doing it that way, unless making me angry is a benefit, which, given some of the code I've seen, it might be. Okay, we are getting close to wrapping up, so I had a team send me code like that last week, and that's when you say, listen, folks, I know, yeah, they got a reaming. All right, that's fair. So I know you stepped out of the time machine from 1993, but I've got to tell you, you can't use that format anymore. Also, I was gonna make a joke. I was gonna make a joke that I'm not going to make because we're still on the air. I was told I will review all of their code. Yeah. Scheduling PowerShell tasks with SQL agent. Use the DBA tools agent. For sure. And instead of using SQL PS, there's at this point, well, really for the past 13, 15 years, there has been no benefit in using SQL PS. And they're not updating it. It's deprecated. It's gone. It's done. Well, it's done for. Do not touch it. It may still be there, but don't mess about it. But I do want to get to Mike's last question because Mike did have a question. And that was a question that involved learning about tables. Do you want to give that context?
Yeah. So SQL Saturday was a big success. A lot of we're transitioning to SQL Server. It is becoming mandatory. So we're like, for example, I need to like create tables quite a bit. So like I'll give you an example. So I'm working on a respiratory infection dashboard for 55 sites. It's a decent amount of data. It's not too big. So I'm making like 5 or 6 different tables and for diagnoses, for medications, for patients, demographics, stuff like that. So I figure out all the SQL and then I got to put it in a table. And I might have 7 or 8 joins, maybe more than that. And I have a hard time like understanding the data types quickly. And then when I say create table, comma, varchar 500, or nvarchar 30, or big int, and I was just getting zillions of errors, and then I'm like literally typing it out manually. So that was my big issue. Is like I think I'm doing this wrong because I've been doing Oracle way too long. I don't even want to say the old word, but I do it slightly different in there and don't think about data types as much. But I know converting data types is expensive, and also if it can't convert, you're gonna get an error. So yeah, so that's it. I was just thinking like, how do I get a little bit faster about doing this?
All right. Here's your answer, Mike. SP describe first result set. This has been in SQL Server since 2012, and what you do in the stored procedure is you pass in your T-SQL as a string, and
Oh, that's
the
interesting.
procedure will look at the first result set in your T-SQL query and will describe it. Will give the data types, the column names, the data types, and the data lengths. If you have multiple result sets, it will only show the first, obviously. But this doesn't
That
have
is
to be.
neat, Kevin. Thank you. I never knew of this.
Yep, and it's powerful. It's very useful. So what it'll show you is the column ordinal. So what order in the result set is it? The name, whether it's nullable, what the system type is in terms of the ID or in terms of the name, the maximum length, precision and scale for decimals, collations if you're using it. If you have user-defined types, you have those specified here as well, etc. So there is quite a bit of information in here that you can use to generate your follow-on create statement. But SP describe first result set. This is a stored procedure. So you might say, oh, well, golly, now I have to write the stored procedure, and then I have to insert that into a temp table, and then query off of that, and so that might be an issue, but I've got a fix for that as well. However, this is SP describe first result set. You can see an example here. I'll show you a couple of the examples. The first one was I'm looking to see if they did any stored procedures. But yeah, you can see object ID, name, type description from sys.indexes, and it'll show you what the results look like. So you have your names, you have your data types, etc. Then you can store the results in a table. So you can create your own table and insert into there, execute SP describe first result set. So you can just copy this query if you want to, and then perform your
So
insert. Or
Or
there's a function, and here we are, sys.dm, describe first result set. So this is a table valued function that will return back your results as a query that you can say select star from, and then you could build out your own table, build out your own query results. So you were saying, Mike?
hold on one second. So you sys.dm execute, and I have the link to execute.
Yep.
First result.
Sys.dm exec described first result set. And Solomon says he has a SQL CLR stored procedure in SQL Sharp that is similar to SP describe first result set, but can handle multiple result sets, and also doesn't complain about things like temp tables. So that's also a helpful way of digging into this. But
you made my May and June, because this is something we do all the time. And I literally was like venting to one of my colleagues who's like more of a full stack programmer. And he said, like, we always try to use try convert. And I'm like, or TriCast. And he's like, I don't even use nvarchar. And I'm like, there's got to be a better way. And this saves a lot of steps, because this is like 500 lines of code, right? Like, so this would, has a couple steps, but way less than tediously going through it and making sure everything is in the right headspace or the right data type.
Yeah, so that's a pretty solid starting point there, and I think that's a good enough starting point. If you have follow-ups, we could talk about it on a future episode of Shop Talk.
I'm going to keep a list.
But for now, we have reached to the top of the hour. Glad to have seen everybody tonight, but we're going to wrap things up. So let me stop sharing my screen. We're going to say goodbye now. Remember that tomorrow we do not have a user group meeting, but we do have user group meetings second, third, and fourth Tuesdays of the month. I will say these are not up yet, but we will get them up soon. So you'll be able to see who's talking when this month, all at meetup.com/TriPass. And until we do see each other at a future TriPass meeting, everybody, take care.